The first thing I felt when I opened my eyes was pain, sharp, relentless pain that seemed to split my skull in two. White ceiling, bright lights. The sterile smell of antiseptic filling my lungs with every shallow breath I took. My body felt heavy, like I was pinned down by invisible weights. And when I tried to move my hand, a dull ache shot through my arm. There was an IV attached to it, a clear tube snaking up to a bag hanging beside the bed. Hospital. I was in a hospital, but why? What happened to me? I blinked slowly, trying to piece together fragments of memory, but there was nothing. Just a vast, terrifying emptiness where my life should have been. No images, no voices, no faces. It was like staring into a black void that swallowed everything I'd ever known. You're awake. The voice came from somewhere to my left, deep and smooth, but carrying an edge that made my skin prickle. I turned my head too quickly and winced as another wave of pain rolled through me. When my vision cleared, I saw him. A man stood near the window, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the glass. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that looked expensive enough to cost more than a car. His hair was dark, styled back neatly, and his face, God, his face was beautiful in a dangerous way. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of storm clouds, gray and intense, fixed directly on me. But there was something else. A thin scar ran along his left cheekbone, faded but still visible, like a reminder of violence from his past. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between fury and devastation. My voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. I swallowed and tried again. Who are you? Something flickered across his face. Shock, maybe, or disbelief. His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might not answer at all. You don't remember me? He asked slowly, each word measured and controlled. I shook my head, confusion swirling through my foggy mind. Should I remember him? He seemed to think I should. The way he looked at me like I'd just stabbed him in the chest made me feel like I was missing something crucial. I don't remember anything, I admitted quietly, my heart starting to race. I don't even know my own name. He moved then, finally stepping away from the window. His footsteps were silent despite his size, predatory almost, and he stopped at the foot of my bed. Up close he was even more intimidating. Everything about him screamed power and danger, from the cold set of his shoulders to the way his hands rested at his sides, relaxed, but ready. The doctor said you have amnesia, he said flatly. From the accident. Accident. Right, that explained the pain, the hospital, the gaps in my memory. But it didn't explain him. Are you? I hesitated, studying his face for any clue. There was something about him that felt familiar, even if I couldn't place it. A pull in my chest, like my body recognized what my mind had forgotten. Are you family? A friend? His expression darkened. No. The single word hit me like a slap. If he wasn't family or a friend, then what was he doing here? Why did he look at me like I'd destroyed his entire world? Before I could ask, a nurse walked in, clipboard in hand, and gave me a warm smile. Oh good, you're awake. How are you feeling? Confused, I answered honestly. She nodded sympathetically and began checking my vitals, asking me basic questions. Did I know what year it was? Could I move my fingers? Was I experiencing any nausea? I answered as best as I could, but my attention kept drifting back to the man standing silently in the corner. He hadn't taken his eyes off me once. After the nurse left, promising to inform the doctor I was conscious, silence fell over the room again. It was suffocating, thick with unspoken tension. I couldn't take it anymore. What's your name? I asked softly. He hesitated, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Jesse. Jesse. The name echoed in my head, and suddenly something clicked. Not a memory exactly, but a feeling, warmth spreading through my chest, followed immediately by a sharp pang of longing. Without thinking, I blurted out, "You're my boyfriend, right?" The effect was instantaneous. Jesse's eyes went wide, genuine shock breaking through his carefully controlled mask. For a split second, he looked like he might laugh or cry. Then his expression hardened again, colder than before. "What did you just say?" he asked, dangerously quiet. I faltered, suddenly unsure. I thought, aren't you? He crossed the distance between us in 2 long strides, his hand slamming down on the bed rail beside my head. I flinched, my heart hammering against my ribs, as he leaned in close, so close I could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. You have some nerve, he growled, his breath hot against my face. After everything you did, after all the lies and betrayal, you wake up and call me your boyfriend? Fear coursed through me, but beneath it was something else. Something that made no sense. Even with him looming over me, radiating anger and pain, I didn't feel threatened. Instead, my traitorous heart beat faster for an entirely different reason. Jesse, I'm sorry, I whispered, though I didn't even know what I was apologizing for. I really don't remember. Stop. His voice cracked slightly. Just stop. He pulled back abruptly, running a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect styling. When he looked at me again, the rage had faded, replaced by something far more painful to witness: grief. You never wanted me, he said quietly, almost to himself. You made that clear enough. And now, when you can't remember any of it, suddenly I'm your boyfriend? My throat tightened. What had I done to him? What kind of person was I before the accident? If I hurt you, I started carefully, then why are you here? Jesse laughed bitterly. Good question. I've been asking myself the same thing. He moved toward the door and panic flared in my chest. I didn't want him to leave. Despite everything, the anger, the accusations, the obvious history between us, that I couldn't recall the thought of him walking out made me feel like I was drowning. Wait, I called out. He paused, hand on the door handle, but didn't turn around. If you hate me so much, I said, my voice shaking, then go. Leave me here and don't come back. His shoulders tensed. The silence stretched on so long I thought he might actually do it. Then he turned his head slightly, just enough that I could see his profile. I should, but, I pressed, but I can't. The admission seemed to cost him something. Even after everything, I can't just walk away from you. Before I could respond, he yanked the door open and left, the sound of it closing echoing through the empty room. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I'd done. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever history existed between Jesse and me, it was far from over. They discharged me 3 days later. I'd spent those 72 hours trying desperately to remember something, anything, but my mind remained frustratingly blank. The doctors assured me the memories might return with time, or they might not. Amnesia was unpredictable, they said, especially in cases of severe head trauma. Jesse hadn't come back. Part of me was relieved. Part of me felt inexplicably hollow. A nurse wheeled me to the hospital entrance, where a sleek black car waited at the curb. The driver, a stern-looking man in a dark suit, opened the rear door without a word. I hesitated, glancing back at the hospital. Where am I going? I asked. Mr. Jesse's orders. The driver replied curtly. You're coming home. Home. The word felt foreign on my tongue. I had no memory of any home, but I climbed into the car anyway. What choice did I have? I had no money, no identification, no one else to turn to. The drive took almost an hour, taking us from the city center into an area where the houses grew larger and farther apart, hidden behind high walls and iron gates. When we finally pulled up to one particular estate, my breath caught. The mansion was enormous, all white stone and tall windows, surrounded by manicured gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. A fountain stood in the circular driveway, water cascading down marble tiers. This can't be right, I murmured. The driver said nothing, simply got out and opened my door. I stepped onto the gravel drive, feeling completely out of place. This didn't look like somewhere I belonged. This looked like somewhere billionaires lived. Or royalty. The front door opened and Jesse emerged. He'd changed from the suit I'd seen him in at the hospital. Now he wore dark jeans and a gray sweater that somehow made him look less intimidating, but no less magnetic. His eyes found mine immediately. That same unreadable expression on his face. Welcome back, he said, though there was no warmth in his tone. I walked toward him slowly, taking in the grandeur of the entrance marble columns, the chandelier visible through the doorway that probably cost more than most people's houses. Do I live here? I asked uncertainly. No, Jesse's response was immediate and cold. This is my house. You're staying here because you have nowhere else to go. The words stung more than they should have. I followed him inside, my footsteps echoing on the polished marble floors. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. All clean lines and expensive furniture, artwork on the walls that looked original. But it felt empty. Cold. Guest room is upstairs, second door on the left. Jesse said without looking at me. Stay out of my private quarters. The east wing is off limits. Jesse. There are men stationed around the property. He continued, cutting me off. For security. Don't try to leave without informing someone first. Security? Men stationed around the property? What kind of life had I been living? Am I a prisoner here? I asked quietly. That made him stop. He turned to face me, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or pain. You're free to leave whenever you want, he said. But the moment you step outside these gates, you're on your own. No protection, no money, no identity. The world out there doesn't know you exist right now. The implication was clear. I was trapped, whether he explicitly said so or not. Why are you doing this? I asked, frustration bleeding into my voice. If I betrayed you so badly, why bring me here at all? Why not just leave me at the hospital? Jesse moved closer, each step deliberate. He stopped just inches away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and woody that made my head spin. Because I'm a fool, he said softly. Because despite everything you did, despite the fact that you tried to destroy my family, he trailed off, jaw clenching. Still what? I pressed. His hand came up and I thought he might touch my face, but he stopped himself. His fingers curled into a fist and dropped back to his side. Get some rest, he said instead, his voice rough. We'll talk tomorrow. He brushed past me, heading deeper into the house, leaving me standing alone in the cavernous entryway. I made my way upstairs, finding the guest room he'd indicated. It was beautiful, king-sized bed with silk sheets, an ensuite bathroom, a balcony overlooking the gardens, everything I could possibly need, except answers. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to Jesse, to the pain in his eyes, to the way my body reacted to his presence even when my mind drew blanks. Around midnight, I gave up and wandered downstairs, thinking maybe some water would help. The house was dark, except for a light coming from what looked like a study. The door was ajar, and through the gap I could see Jesse sitting at a desk, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. I should have gone back upstairs. Should have given him privacy. Instead, I pushed the door open. He looked up, surprise crossing his features before they smoothed back into careful neutrality. Can't sleep? Too many questions, I admitted, stepping inside. The study was lined with bookshelves, a leather couch against one wall, and photographs scattered across the desk. My eyes caught on one of them, Jesse and another man, both younger, both smiling. The other man had similar features, clearly related. Your brother? I guessed. Jesse's hand tightened around his glass. Yes. What did I do to him? You really want to know? There was a warning in his tone. I need to know, I said firmly. I need to understand why you look at me like I'm both the best and worst thing that ever happened to you. He stood abruptly, draining his glass and setting it down hard enough that I thought it might shatter. When he looked at me, his eyes were blazing. You want the truth? Fine. He closed the distance between us. You seduced me, made me fall for you, made me believe we had something real. And all the while you were working for my enemies, gathering information, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My stomach dropped. No, I would. You did, he interrupted harshly. You passed along intel that led to an attempt on my brother's life. He survived. Barely. But the fallout nearly destroyed everything we'd built. Tears pricked my eyes. Jesse, I'm sorry, I don't remember. But if I did those things, sorry doesn't change anything, he said, but his voice had lost its sharp edge. He reached out, his thumb catching a tear that had escaped down my cheek. The touch was gentle, almost tender. The worst part is, even knowing what you did, even hating you for it, I still can't let you go. His forehead pressed against mine and I could feel him trembling. You've ruined me, he whispered. Morning came too quickly. I barely slept. my dreams plagued by fragmented images that might have been memories or might have been my imagination trying to fill the gaps. When I finally gave up and got out of bed, pale sunlight was filtering through the curtains. I showered and dressed in clothes I found in the guest room closet. Simple jeans and a soft blue shirt that fit perfectly. Someone had clearly prepared for my arrival, which raised more questions. How long had Jesse been planning to bring me here? The smell of coffee drew me downstairs. I followed it to a massive kitchen that looked like something out of a cooking show. Marble countertops, state-of-the-art appliances, an island in the center large enough to seat 8 people. Jesse stood by the espresso machine, his back to me. He'd clearly just showered too. His hair was still damp and he wore black pants and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his hevos. I could see scars on his forearms, old wounds, faded but numerous. "Morning," I said softly, not wanting to startle him. He glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "Coffee, please." He poured a second cup and slid it across the island to me. Our fingers brushed as I took it, and electricity shot up my arm. From the way his jaw tightened, he felt it too. We stood there in silence, sipping our coffee, the tension so thick I could barely breathe. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." I set my cup down carefully. "Last night, you said I seduced you. That we had something. What exactly were we to each other?" Jesse's knuckles went white around his cup. For a long moment I didn't think he'd answer. "We were together," he finally said, his voice low. "For 6 months. You said you loved me. I believed you." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. We'd been together, in love, and then I'd betrayed him. "Did you?" I hesitated, not sure I wanted to know the answer. "Did you love me too?" His eyes met mine and the raw emotion in them stole my breath. "Yes." One word. One simple, devastating word that explained everything. The pain, the anger, the reason he couldn't let me go despite what I'd done. Before I could respond, the kitchen door swung open and a man walked in. He was shorter than Jesse, stocky, with a shaved head and a nose that had clearly been broken more than once. He stopped short when he saw me. "What the hell is he doing here?" the man demanded, his voice harsh with barely contained fury. Jesse moved smoothly between us. "Marcus." "Not now." "Not now?" Marcus's face was turning red. "This piece of trash nearly killed your brother and you bring him into your home? Have you lost your mind?" I said "not now," Jesse repeated, his tone dropping into something dangerous. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Jesse's expression made him back down. He shot me one last venomous glare before storming out. The silence that followed was deafening. "I should go," I said quietly. "This was a mistake. My being here is only going to cause you more problems." "You're not going anywhere." The finality in his voice made me look up. Jesse had moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Why?" I asked, searching his face. "Why won't you let me leave? You said yourself that I destroyed everything. Wouldn't it be easier if I just disappeared?" "Easier?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Nothing about this is easy. But the day you left, the day you walked out of my life, I swore that if you ever came back I'd never let you go again." His hand came up, cupping my jaw with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the intensity in his eyes. "Even if you hate me for it, even if you want to run, I won't survive losing you twice." My heart was racing. "I don't hate you." "You should." His thumb traced along my cheekbone. "After everything I've put you through, you should hate me." "Well, I don't," I said firmly. "I don't remember what happened between us, what I did, who I was. But right now, standing here with you, I feel," I struggled to find the words, "safe. Like this is where I'm supposed to be." Something broke in his expression. His forehead dropped to rest against mine, his breath coming faster. "You're going to be the death of me," he whispered. "Jesse." Whatever I was going to say died as alarms suddenly blared throughout the house. Jesse's entire demeanor changed instantly, going from vulnerable to lethal in a heartbeat. "Stay here," he ordered, already moving toward the door. "What's happening?" "Security breach." He pulled open a drawer, revealing a sleek black handgun that he checked with practiced efficiency. "Someone's trying to get in." Fear spiked through me. "Who?" "I don't know, but they picked the wrong day." He looked back at me, his expression fierce. "Lock yourself in the pantry. Don't come out until I come get you." "But now," he barked. I stumbled toward the pantry, my heart in my throat. But as I reached the door, I couldn't help looking back. Jesse was speaking rapid fire into his phone, coordinating with his security team every inch the dangerous man I'd first glimpsed at the hospital. This was his world. Violence and danger and constant threats. And somehow I'd been part of it. As I closed the pantry door, plunging myself into darkness, I heard raised voices, running footsteps, the sound of something heavy crashing in another room. I sank to the floor, wrapping my arms around my knees and prayed that Jesse would be okay. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the lost memories, the impossible situation, I realized with startling clarity that I cared about him. Deeply. My body remembered what my mind had forgotten. Minutes crawled by like hours. The sounds of chaos continued, then gradually died down. Finally, footsteps approached the pantry. The door opened and Jesse stood there, slightly disheveled but unharmed. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly burst into tears. "It's over," he said quietly. "You're safe." I launched myself at him without thinking, wrapping my arms around his waist and burying my face in his chest. He froze for a moment, clearly shocked. Then his arms came around me, holding me tight. "I thought something might happen to you," I mumbled against his shirt. He pulled back just enough to look down at me, his eyes searching my face. "Would that bother you?" "Yes." The admission came easily. "It would destroy me." Jesse's expression softened into something I hadn't seen before. "Hope?" "Then maybe," he said slowly. "We're not as broken as I thought." The house settled back into an uneasy quiet after the security breach, but the tension hadn't entirely dissipated. I followed Jesse from the pantry into the living room, where broken glass littered the floor near one of the tall windows. Two of his men were already cleaning up, their movements efficient and practiced, like this wasn't the first time they'd dealt with such a situation. My eyes caught on Jesse's shoulder, a dark stain spreading across his white shirt. "You're hurt," I said, my voice coming out sharper than intended. He glanced down as if noticing it for the first time. "It's just a scratch." "That's not a scratch. That's—" I moved closer, reaching for him before I could think better of it. "Sit down." Now, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise maybe, or amusement, but he didn't argue. He lowered himself onto the leather couch and I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I began unbuttoning his shirt. "The first aid kit is in the bathroom down the hall," he said quietly, watching me with an intensity that made my skin flush. I found it quickly and returned, my heart hammering as I peeled back the blood-soaked fabric. The wound wasn't deep, but it was angry and red, a gash that ran along the curve of his shoulder. Whoever had broken in had gotten closer than I'd realized. "This could have been worse," I whispered, cleaning the wound with antiseptic. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the cotton pad. "Hey." His hand came up, covering mine, steadying it. "I'm fine. This is nothing compared to what I've survived before." That should have been comforting. Instead, it made everything worse. How many times had he been hurt like this? How many scars did he carry that I couldn't see? "Why did they come here?" I asked, applying antibiotic ointment with careful fingers. "Was it because of me?" Jesse was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "They know you're important to me. That makes you a target. Then send me away." The words tasted bitter, but I forced them out anyway. "If my being here puts you in danger—" "No." The single word was absolute, leaving no room for arguments. "Jesse, be reasonable." "I've spent the last 6 months being reasonable," he cut in, his gray eyes boring into mine. "I was reasonable when you left. I was reasonable when I tried to move on. I was reasonable when I told myself I should hate you for what you did to my family. And where did that get me?" He leaned forward and I found myself trapped between his body and the couch, his face inches from mine. "Nowhere," he answered his own question. "It got me nowhere because I couldn't stop thinking about you. Couldn't stop wondering where you were. If you were safe, if you ever thought about me the way I thought about you every single day." My breath caught. "Jesse, the first thing I felt when I got the call about your accident wasn't relief that you were alive," he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "It was terror. Pure absolute terror that I might lose you before I could tell you that I understood, that I'd figured out the truth about what happened, that I forgave you. Tears pricked at my eyes. You forgive me? I realized you were manipulated, he said, his hand coming up to cup my face. Someone used your desperation against you. They threatened the people you loved most in the world. And you did what you thought you had to do to save them. How could I not forgive that? But your brother is alive. Angry as hell, but alive. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. And he'll come around eventually. He always does. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to accept the forgiveness he was offering. But guilt sat heavy in my chest, even for things I couldn't remember doing. What if my memory comes back? I asked quietly. What if I remember everything and realize I did terrible things? What if I'm not the person you think I am? Jesse's thumb brushed across my cheekbone, catching a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. Then we'll deal with it, together. The word hung between us, heavy with promise. Why, I whispered, why are you willing to take that risk? He leaned forward, eliminating the last few inches of space between us. His breath ghosted across my lips as he spoke. Because losing you once nearly destroyed me. I'm not strong enough to survive it twice. I won't leave, I heard myself say, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Even if everything comes back, even if I remember every mistake I made, I won't leave you again. Something in his expression cracked open, revealing the vulnerability he'd been hiding beneath all that controlled anger and pain. His forehead pressed against mine and I could feel him trembling. Promise me, he breathed. I promise. The kiss, when it came, was nothing like I'd expected. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and consuming, like he was trying to memorize every detail, afraid I might disappear if he let go. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I melted into him. My own hands gripping his shoulders, careful to avoid his injury like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine again. I need you to understand something, he said hoarsely. This life, my life, it's dangerous. There will always be threats. Always be people trying to hurt me by hurting the ones I care about. If you stay, that's what you're signing up for. I pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes. Then I guess you'll have to teach me how to protect myself. A real smile broke across his face, transforming him from dangerous to devastating. I can do that. He kissed me again, slower this time, savoring it. And for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, I felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. When we finally separated, I finished bandaging his shoulder properly, my touch lingering longer than strictly necessary. He watched me the entire time, that intense gray gaze tracking my every movement. Thank you, he said softly when I was done. For what? For coming back to me. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. Even if you don't remember choosing to. My heart stuttered in my chest. Jesse, The moment was interrupted by footsteps in the hallway. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression still hostile but marginally less murderous than before. The perimeter is secure, he reported, his eyes flicking between us with obvious disapproval. But we need to talk about long-term security measures, especially now that he jerked his chin toward me. Later, Jesse said firmly. Give us a few hours. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Jesse's tone made him back down. He left without another word, though the disapproval rolled off him in waves. He hates me, I observed. He's protective, Jesse corrected. There's a difference. Once he sees that you're not going anywhere, he'll come around. I wasn't so sure, but I didn't argue. Instead, I settled onto the couch beside Jesse, our shoulders touching, his hand finding mine. What happens now? I asked. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Now we figure out how to move forward. Together. Together. That word again wrapping around me like a promise and a lifeline all at once. I squeezed his hand and he squeezed back. Whatever came next, whatever dangers lurked in the shadows of his world, at least I wouldn't be facing them alone. The next morning, Jesse woke me before dawn. Get dressed, he said, standing in the doorway of the guest room like a shadow. Something comfortable but professional. We're going out. I blinked sleep from my eyes, confused. Where? You'll see. 20 minutes. He was gone before I could ask more questions. I dragged myself out of bed and rummaged through the closet, eventually settling on dark slacks and a button-down shirt that seemed to fit the vague criteria he'd given me. When I made my way downstairs, Jesse was waiting by the front door, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "You clean up nice," he observed, his eyes traveling over me in a way that made heat crawl up my neck. "Where are we going?" I asked again. "You wanted to understand my world," he said, opening the door. "Today you get a glimpse of it." The drive took us into the heart of the city, to a sleek high-rise building downtown. The lobby was all polished marble and modern art. Security guards stationed at every entrance. They nodded respectfully to Jesse as we passed, their eyes lingering on me with undisguised curiosity. We took a private elevator to the top floor, where it opened directly into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A long table dominated the space, and seated around it were a dozen men and women, all dressed in expensive suits, all radiating the kind of confidence that came with power. The conversation died the moment we entered. "Everyone," Jesse said, his hand settling on the small of my back. "This is Alan. He'll be accompanying me from now on." Alan. My name. Hearing it felt strange, like trying on someone else's clothes. But I supposed it was mine, even if I didn't remember claiming it. The room erupted into barely concealed whispers. Some looked curious, others disapproving. One man near the end of the table, older, with silver threading through his dark hair, stood abruptly. "You can't be serious," he said, his voice carrying clearly. After what he did, Jesse's hand pressed more firmly against my back, a silent signal to stay calm. "Victor, sit down. He betrayed us, Jesse. He handed information to the Volkov family that nearly cost your brother his life. And you're just going to parade him around like—" I said sit down. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jesse's voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath it that made even Victor hesitate. After a tense moment, the older man sat, but his glare remained fixed on me. "Alan's past actions were the result of coercion," Jesse continued, addressing the room at large. "He was blackmailed into compliance, and when he tried to back out, he was punished for it. The people responsible have been dealt with. That chapter is closed." "And what about his memory loss?" a woman with sharp features asked. "How do we know this isn't an act? A way to worm his way back into your trust?" Before Jesse could respond, I found my voice. "You don't." Every eye in the room turned to me. "You have no reason to trust me," I continued, keeping my voice steady despite the anxiety churning in my stomach. "I don't even trust myself. I can't remember who I was or what I. But I can tell you this. I'm not going anywhere. Whether you like it or not, I'm staying by Jesse's side, so you can either accept that and move on, or you can keep questioning it and waste everyone's time." Silence greeted my words. Then, unexpectedly, someone laughed. A woman near the middle of the table with kind eyes and graying hair. "I like him," she said, smiling at Jesse. "He's got spine." The tension in the room eased fractionally. Jesse squeezed my back once before guiding me to an empty chair beside his at the head of the table. "Now that we've cleared that up," he said dryly, "let's get to business." The meeting that followed was both boring and fascinating. They discussed shipping routes, investment portfolios, and real estate acquisitions. All perfectly legal on the surface, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there were layers of meaning I wasn't grasping. These people weren't just businessmen and women, they were something else entirely. After 2 hours, the meeting finally adjourned. People filed out, some offering me cautious nods, others studiously ignoring my presence. When the room was empty except for us, I turned to Jesse. "What was that really about?" I asked. "That wasn't just a business meeting." He smiled slightly, impressed. "You're perceptive." "No, it wasn't. That was me making a statement, that you're under my protection, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." "Why?" I stood, facing him fully. "Why put yourself in that position? Half those people looked ready to revolt. Let them try." His hand came up, fingers brushing my jawline. "You're worth it." The words settled in my chest, warm and heavy. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "What is it?" I asked. "Marcus found something. Come on." We left the building and drove in silence to a different location. a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, Marcus was waiting with several other men I didn't recognize. They all looked grim. "Show him," Jesse said quietly. Marcus pulled out a tablet, swiping through images. They were surveillance photos, grainy but clear enough to make out figures. In one I saw myself younger, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. In another I was handing over an envelope. "This is from 6 months ago," Marcus explained. His tone clipped. "Right before you delivered that package to Jesse's brother." I stared at the images, trying to feel something, recognition, guilt, anything. But there was nothing. Just a strange disconnect, like looking at a stranger. "The man you're with," Jesse said, pointing to the figure beside me in the photos, "is Ivan Volkov. He runs one of the largest criminal organizations on the East Coast. And he's the one who manipulated you." My blood ran cold. "Is he still out there?" "Yes." Jesse's jaw tightened. "He went underground after his plan failed. But he's resurfacing. And according to our sources, he's not happy that you're alive." The implication was clear. I was in danger. More specifically, I was putting Jesse in danger by being connected to him. "Then we end this," I said, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "We find him and we end this." Jesse studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this my way, carefully. And you stay by my side at all times. Understood?" "Understood." He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me tightly. Against my hair he murmured, "I'm not losing you again. Not to him. Not to anyone." I held him just as tightly, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feeling of safety in his arms. "You won't," I promised. "We're in this together now." Together. There was that word again. And this time I meant it with everything I had. A week passed, and life settled into something resembling a routine, though calling anything about living with Jesse routine felt absurd. Every morning I woke to find him already awake, sitting in the chair by the window of my room, just watching me sleep. The first time it happened I'd been startled. By the third day it had become oddly comforting. "Don't you have better things to do?" I asked one morning, stretching under the covers. "Nothing more important than this," he replied simply, and the sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. He was protective to the point of being overbearing. If I went to get water in the middle of the night, he'd materialize from nowhere, asking if I needed anything. If I wanted to go outside, even just to the garden, he insisted on accompanying me. Once I'd locked the bathroom door and he'd stood outside the entire time, as if someone might try to attack me through the ventilation system. "I'm not made of glass," I told him one afternoon, exasperated. "I'm not going to break." "I know that." He was typing something on his laptop, not looking up. "Doesn't change anything." "Jesse." I walked over, closing the laptop so he'd have to pay attention. "You can't watch me every second of every day. It's not healthy." He looked up at me then, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. "The day you were taken from me, I felt like my world ended. Now that you're back, even if you don't remember us, even if everything is different, I can't take any chances. I won't." How was I supposed to argue with that? Instead of fighting it, I climbed into his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. He stiffened in surprise before melting into the embrace, his face buried in the crook of my shoulder. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." His arms tightened around me. "You better not." The kiss that followed was slow and deep, tasting of coffee and promise. When we finally separated, both slightly breathless, he smiled against my lips. "You're dangerous. You know that?" "I learned from the best," I teased. That night, I dreamed again. But this time it wasn't fragmented or confusing. It was vivid and clear, like watching a movie of my own life. I saw a small apartment, modest but clean, a woman with kind eyes, and my smile was cooking dinner while a man, my father, I realized with a jolt, sat reading the newspaper. They were laughing about something, happy and whole. Then the scene shifted. Men in masks breaking down the door. My mother screaming. My father trying to fight them off. And a voice cold and calculating, telling me exactly what I had to do if I ever wanted to see them alive again. Deliver the package. Don't ask questions. Do this one thing, and they'd be released. I'd believed them. God, I'd actually believed them. The dream shifted again, to the moment I'd handed over that envelope, my hands shaking, knowing deep down that something was wrong but too terrified to back out. And then I jerked awake, gasping, tears streaming down my face. Jesse was there instantly, as if he'd been waiting for this. He pulled me against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head while the other rubbed soothing circles on my back. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe. You're safe." "I remember," I choked out between sobs. "Jesse, I remember. My parents, what they did to me, what I did to you." "Shh." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "It's all right, you're all right." "No, it's not." I pulled back to look at him, needing him to understand. "They threatened my parents. They showed me pictures of them tied up, hurt. I thought if I just did what they asked, my parents would be freed. But it was all a lie. They were already gone. And I didn't know. I delivered that package thinking I was saving them. And instead I nearly killed your brother." Jesse's hands cupped my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears. "I know. I've known for months. The people who did this to you, who manipulated you, they paid for it. Every single one of them. But your brother is alive," he repeated firmly. "And he understands. Maybe not fully, maybe he'll always carry some anger about what happened. But he doesn't blame you. Not anymore." I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. "What if the memories keep coming back?" I asked quietly. "What if I remember more things I've done? More ways I've hurt people?" He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. "Then we'll deal with those too. One memory at a time. One day at a time." But I meant what I said. "I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." The certainty in his voice steadied me. I took a shaky breath, then another, letting myself sink into his warmth. "You know," I said after a long silence, "when I woke up and called you my boyfriend, I didn't actually remember you. I just felt it, like my body knew something my mind had forgotten." "And now," he asked softly, "now that you're starting to remember." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Now I know I don't want to call you my boyfriend anymore." Pain flashed across his features, quickly masked. "Oh, I want to call you something more permanent," I continued, watching his expression shift from hurt to confusion to cautious hope. "Something that says you're not just passing through my life. Something that means forever." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Al, I want to call you mine," I finished. "Completely, permanently, in every way that matters." The smile that broke across his face was blinding. He kissed me fiercely, passionately, like he was pouring every emotion he couldn't put into words into that single moment of connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "You already are mine," he said roughly. "You've been mine since the moment I met you. Even when I thought I'd lost you. Even when I tried to hate you. You've always been mine. Then I guess that makes you mine too." I replied, smiling through the last of my tears. "Absolutely." He kissed me again, softer this time. "Now and always." We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, the rest of the world fading away. And for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, I felt truly whole. The memories might keep returning. The past might continue to haunt us. But as long as I had Jesse, as long as we had each other, I knew we could face anything. "I love you," I whispered against his lips. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes shining. "Say that again." "I love you, Jesse." "I love you too," he breathed, and kissed me like it was the first time and the last time all at once. In his arms, surrounded by his warmth and his promise of forever, I finally felt like I'd come home.